Hello, hello, welcome back for the third installment of the Mario RPG Tangent series, where past me plays the game, present me makes the commentary. And hopefully one of those two will suit your interests or your needs. To be honest, when I started out, I was like, all right, I'll be able to talk a little bit about how I got into Mario RPG and, what it meant to me and all that kind of stuff contextually. And I really didn't have much beyond that. So I'll be honest, we'll kind of be finding our way as we go through the playthrough at this point. Not to say I don't have a lot to say, I just haven't figured out exactly. And there's a lot of stuff I'd like to say, but does it relate to anything that we're watching on the screen? That's kind of a big question. I figure, okay, I'll go ahead and start it off since there isn't really a whole lot going on at the moment. The difference, I actually had somebody ask a question. He was saying, why is it not okay for somebody to say, or why does society look down on somebody that stands in front of everybody, grandstands, throws their hands in the air and says, I'm the best at whatever it is, the best at sports, the best at this particular sport, the best at gaming, the best at whatever. Why is that frowned on? Isn't that just confidence? And there's a important distinction, I think, that needs to be made between confidence and arrogance, or confidence and pride. Confidence is located internally. It has nothing to do with anybody else. You can be 100% confident in your abilities, in who you are as a person, and it doesn't matter if anybody else is around, doesn't matter if there's anybody else that's better than you, or, that socially would be considered better than you, or inferior to you, or whatever. You are confident in what you can do. For me, I know I can edit. I'm not the best editor in the world, but I'm confident that you give me something to edit, I'll be able to crank something out for you. Whether or not I'm the best, it's irrelevant. My confidence isn't whether or not I'm the best, it's whether or not I'm competent in what I can do. Confident in my competence, essentially. And so I don't need to say I'm the best. Even if I believe that I was, there's really no point. And honestly, if I believe that I am, there's always, I think this is a truism, there's always going to be somebody better. Even if it's just better at one particular aspect of what you do, there's always going to be somebody better. So for anybody to think themselves to be the best, ultimately, at anything, is folly. It's a ridiculous thing in general. If you have that thought circulating through your brain, you want to catch that and say, you know what? Whether I am or not doesn't matter, but I just assume that I'm not the best. And I love Barry Sanders. Barry Sanders, I love that guy growing up. He was a running back for the Lions, an amazing running back. On any other team, people go back and forth, well, would his running style have translated to other teams? But he made stuff happen. And with a really good line, a really good team, a strong passing game, I think he would have been amazing. As it was, he was, on the verge of setting several records. Records weren't important to him. Whether he was the best or not didn't matter to him. His dad even said, James Brown, who was a running back for the Browns, actually, well before Barry, said, his own dad was saying, James Brown will be the best. You'll never be better than him. So, and I don't think that was his dad being a jerk. That was just his dad, probably being honest, but also just, kind of keeping his son grounded. He probably saw how talented he was and was just like, look, I'm not going to tell you you're the greatest and you're the best because that's not going to do anything for you beneficial. Like, it doesn't help to think you're the best. It helps to be confident. It doesn't help to be prideful or arrogant. And whether you believe in scripture or not, there's a ton. And this is what baffled me. The guy who asked me this question said he was a believer. So I'm like, you got pride goes before the fall. God opposes the proud. He gives grace to the humble. Do not be one who beats his breast, stands in front of everyone and beats his breast and brags about his accomplishments. Be quiet, be humble, and do what you do in secret so that you may be rewarded in heaven. And again, whether you believe in rewarding in heaven or not, or God or not, rewarding in heaven or God or not, I think humility is a great way to go about things. But the difference is pride or arrogance, what people perceive as that, is when you say, I am the best or I am better than, because that's not internal anymore. Now that's based on a comparison. You have to be able to compare yourself to other people in order to feel that you are the best. Like, inherently, to say you're the best, you have to compare yourself to other people. To say you're better than someone, you're comparing yourself to somebody else. And there's no need to do that, but that's where pride comes in. And, I was always taught, don't compare yourself to anybody else. Whatever you do, however you feel, it should be based on who you are. Just because somebody may be better than you, don't feel less than, don't feel like you're inadequate just because there is somebody who's better than you. It's okay Different people have different skill sets. You shouldn't feel any less about yourself just because somebody's better at something than you are, nor should you feel any better about yourself just because you're better than they are, because there's going to be something that they're better at than you are. There's nobody here that I think video games are a great way of kind of painting a very simple picture for us of how life works. If you're playing a fighting game, you have a very strong character, like a Zangief from Street Fighter, big muscles, able to do crazy grabs that take away half your power just by grabbing you, piles driver you into the ground. He's not fast. Like, his whole thing is he tries to run across the street and catch you, but I mean it takes a lot of skill to be able to play a Zangief character, because the button inputs are ridiculous, the controls that you have to do are crazy, but he is a powerful guy. If he gets his hands on you, he can take anywhere from a half to 3/4 of your life bar just on one power move. But he's got to be able to get his hands on you. Whereas you got other characters that can poke at you all day and play footsies with you all day. They're incredibly fast, but they're only chipping away, basically speaking, at your health. And that's life. If you're muscle bound, if you're super strong, muscle bound by definition means you're not able to, you don't have full range of motion. I believe that's the actual definition of it. But if you see somebody who's muscle bound, they can't touch their hands behind their back or in front. They just have so much muscle, it bulks them up too much. So they're incredibly powerful and they're very strong, but they don't have the flexibility or the range of motion that somebody who is leaner would have. And vice versa, somebody who's very lean, somebody who's very quick, they're not going to be able to deliver a lot of power. Now, obviously, your technique determines a lot of where your power comes from, but there's a reason why we have weight classes. And you have somebody who's really, really, thin and light, even if they're able to torque and twist and do their whole thing, connecting with somebody who weighs twice as much as they do, or, 100, has got 50 or 60 pounds on them, it's not going to have quite the impact that it would if the situation was reversed. And that's the way life is. Some people call it yin and yang, but the bottom line is there is nobody that has everything. If you're skilled in one area, hyper skilled in one area, chances are you don't have a lot of skills in another area. You may, doesn't mean you're impotent in other areas or you're completely inadequate, but you're probably not going to be as amazing in other areas. If you're somebody like me, I consider myself a jack of all trades. A jack of all trades is I'm not amazing at everything or anything in particular, but I'm good at a lot of things. I can hold my own in a lot of things. I'm not going to knock your I would say knock your pants off, but I don't know why I would want to do that. I'm not gonna, wow you with my prowess in any particular thing, but I'm gonna be able to do multiple jobs. I'm gonna be able to do multiple things. I'm not a gamer, but you give me a little bit of time to practice the game, I will be sufficient at the game. I'll be able to beat most games eventually, and I might, okay, this is really piss poor timing. This does not look good for me. But this is all about staying humble. Here I am saying I'm amazing at gaming, and well, I didn't say I was amazing. I said I was adequate, and that's what adequate means. It means you die at stupid places like that. I don't think that happens a whole lot in this playthrough, but yeah, I do. I definitely do die. But so the good side is I don't have a lot of weak points. Obviously anything to do with math, physics. I'm not going to be your engineer. I'm actually a horrible server. I'm good at serving. I'm just not good at making money while serving. When I was serving with Macro and Grill, I think it was the summer of my sophomore year, people gave me 20% tips, 25% tips, and they gave great feedback about my service prowess. But I was only serving like 5 or 6 tables a night because I would talk to them and engage in conversation. Well, that's the same thing, but and that's how it became twice as long. I would use synonyms and boggle their minds. But it was just really nice. We'd have these conversations back and forth and with multiple tables. And while other people were doing 20 to 30 tables a night, I'm doing 6 to 10. So I wasn't losing money, but I wasn't making a lot of money. On like a busy Friday night, I was walking out with $35. Everybody else was coming out with 100, 120 easy. And it's because I wasn't upselling. I wasn't, offering alcohol. I would kind of as a cursory thing, but I wasn't like selling it. I wasn't selling desserts. And that's not a slight on servers who do that. You present it in a tantalizing way. And if the people choose to go for it, they go for it. In theory, you're just giving them what they want. You're just presenting it to them in a way that they may not have thought in a way that makes them realize that they wanted something they didn't know they wanted. That's the ideal salesman. The worst salesman is making them, pressuring somebody or manipulating somebody into buying something they genuinely didn't want. But you have servers on both sides of the aisle, as it were. But I didn't do either of those. I would mention, say, hey, we have a dessert menu if you're interested, but you look like you're pretty full. They're like, yeah, we're not really feeling it. I'm like, great, let me bring you the check. So I was, like I said, I was walking away with very little, but in terms of the restaurant, by the restaurant standards, I was not a good server because, I'm not making much money. They're making even less money. And those people are sitting in those tables for a lot longer than elsewhere in the restaurant. And I didn't do that on purpose. I didn't say, you know what, it doesn't matter. I'm going to talk to people. I'm going to do it my way. It was just, that's how I naturally did it. And it felt very odd. It felt very forced. I wasn't sure how to move things along. And so so in that way, I guess I was great for a customer, but not for myself or for the business. So overall, not a great server. Which goes along with what I was saying. I wouldn't be a good physicist, engineer, anything to do with math or science on any high level, not my thing. But I've had probably a dozen or more jobs in my lifetime, and I've done well at all of them. Usually I just kind of get burned out or tired or, I'm just like, it just wasn't right for me. And it usually coincides with a move, literally moving to a different locale for whatever reason. And so it works out. But that's me. And there's plenty of folks like me out there that we're good at, we're average or slightly above average at a lot of things, but we don't excel at any particular thing, and we don't really suck at anything in particular. Like I said, aside from, I would say, math and science in my instance. But then there are other people who they're amazing. They're engineers. They're freaking brilliant when it comes to math and all that kind of stuff, but they don't have interpersonal skills. They haven't really developed that because they were, what their interest is and how their mind works. It's not an expressive, communicative mindset. It's geared towards function, and conversation is a little awkward. That said, I've worked with engineers who are pleasantly, very pleasant people, great to have conversations with. So I'm not saying if you're smart or you're an engineer, you have no people skills, or if you have people skills, you can't be an engineer or any of those things. But you're going to see on average, there's going to be somebody who's really, really strong with something is going to be really weak in another area. And I was talking actually with a gal who, I met on Etsy. She actually sold me, you can't see it right now, but there's a almost pristine condition Nintendo Entertainment System. And I'll tell you, I'm a sucker for this stuff. It's been the bane of my existence, really, the bane of my financial existence, because finding like retro gaming, particular, things, whether it's a game, a system, whatever, that's in really good condition, it's like a time capsule. It's like going back into the past. Well, it's not like that. It really is. I mean, well, okay, it's not technically going back in the past, of course, but it's that really bizarre thing where you're like, this is what it looked like when it came off the shelf. 30 years ago, it would have smelled like this. Like, it actually has if y'all know the 80s or 90s electronic smell, that's what it smelled like. I can open up the Nintendo and I can actually smell the new electronic smell. It's ridiculous. Anyway, we got to talking, and she had mentioned, oh gosh, I lost my train of thought. Not the first time, not the last time. Watch the game. Forget about me for a minute. Yeah, it was totally going to tie it into our conversation. And I can't, it had nothing to do with the game system. But I said, you could be amazing, but you're going to have different levels of efficacy. It might come back to me. Probably not. Sorry. Mea culpa. I totally screwed up on that. Yeah, because it had nothing to do with the video game. It just so happened that's what we bought. But we had a conversation, and it tied into what I was saying beautifully. And I just completely lost. I got lost in the weeds. I got too busy talking about. That's the problem with tangents. If you're not really paying attention and focused on your tangents, if you get 2 or 3 branches removed, you completely lose track of where you're going with it. I'm actually going over our conversation in my mind and trying to remember what she said that had any relevance to what we were talking about just now, and I can't recall. So we'll have to move on. But yeah, so like I said, there are plenty of people that have these strengths and then they have a weakness, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's how life works. And so to esteem yourself or to think yourself better than anybody, like, okay, I can be better at a lot of people at this one thing, but there's going to be a lot of people that are better at so many other things than I am. It's just, comparison is never a way to go. And again, I mean, I hate using biblical principles just because I know there are a lot of people that they couldn't care less about it. But, you know, just like Jesus, you're not really going to go wrong living off of what Jesus said, you know, going by what Jesus said. Like, whether you believe he was the Son of God or not, Savior of your life, he lived a good life, you know, and he said a lot of great things. And it's the same thing, I think, with the Bible. A lot of people take umbrage with the Old Testament, and there's a reason why Jesus fulfilled the Old Testament. He fulfilled the old contract, the old covenant, which doesn't mean he voided it. He specifically says, I did not come to void the contract. I didn't come to say, you know what, that's no longer applicable. He said, I came to fulfill it, which means once a contract is fulfilled, you don't have to do anything to fulfill it. It's been done. You know, if you owed somebody $500 and somebody comes in and pays that $500, you don't still owe that $500. That $500 obligation was already met. And so people don't understand that. It doesn't mean that everything goes out the window, but a lot of the old stuff does. And because it was contextual, it had to do with where Israel was at the time and where the world was at the time. And it's just not the way it is now. But I gotta stop saying I hate that. But it does say, do not in Paul, one of his letters to one of the churches, he says, do not compare yourself to other people. And that it really, because that is pride. That is where arrogance comes in. I'm the best. You don't have to say you're the best. You can say, hey, I'm great at what I do. That's all you need to say. Why do you have to say I'm the best? Why do you want people to know that you're the best? Other than, I mean, really, there's no other way to take that. This guy's an arrogant jerk. It's not confidence. Confidence is, hey, I think I can handle whatever's coming at me. I'm a great fighter, or I'm a great player. I think I can handle whatever comes at me. Even that is a little, cocky. Just say, hey, I played the game to the best of my abilities, and thankfully, I do really well. I've had great success. That's accurate. Why do you need to say more than that? Why is it so important? This guy was upset. He's like, why is it that society hates when people stand up and say, I'm the best? I'm like, well, you sound like a pompous, arrogant gas bag. That's why. And it's not even that you sound that way. It's that you think you are better. You have made it clear that you think you are better than. And not just in that one area that you're saying, I'm the best player, I'm the best fighter, I'm the best engineer, the best gamer. It's that mentality. It doesn't stop there. Pride doesn't have natural parameters. You can't rein in pride and say, well, I'm proud of the fact that I'm the best at this, but I'm humble in every other aspect because I know that I'm not the best in other areas. That's not how pride works. Pride exalts yourself. And the only way pride works is if you can compare yourself to other people. A lot of stuff that people are proud of, their accomplishments, if everybody had done them, if they were common, they wouldn't be proud of them. If you're proud of graduating elementary school, well, I mean, and hey, some people have incredibly adverse situations, but I would say people who get their GED later in life, that's different than just moving on from elementary to middle school. That's like expected. If you don't do it, it means that whether it's a behavioral issue, a learning complication, whatever it was, an exception to the rule, you were not able to make it into middle school. You were not able to make that jump from 5th to 6th grade. At least that's how it works where I am, 5 to 6. So nobody's really proud of going to middle school because everybody does it. It's expected. But if it was a rare thing, if only 10% of the kids that actually went through 5th grade made it to 6th grade on their first try, you'd have a lot more kids being proud of it. Navy SEALs are an elite group, and it's not artificial. Like when you hear about what these guys go through, what their training involves, I wouldn't want to mess with it. I mean, literally, and y'all can correct me if you know for a fact, but I've talked to several people. I'm not sure I've ever talked to actually a Navy SEAL, though. I will caveat it with that. But like where they literally drown you, or you drown, and one of your Navy SEALs, your teammates will resuscitate you. But like one of the things you do, I don't know if it's intentional or if you're not able to succeed, you will drown and they'll resuscitate you. In other words, they don't rescue you before you drown. Because I think it was like you need to stay afloat for a certain amount of time or keep your head above water a certain amount of time. They don't stop the exercise when you don't succeed. If you drop below, they stop the exercise when you're incapacitated. And you've got to have your other SEAL mates come up there and help you out. It is a very difficult, very strenuous thing. So there is a sense of accomplishment. I would say an exuberation. That's not a word. Exuberation. Can you tell I've had a little bit of liquid courage this afternoon? You have a very strong, pronounced sense of accomplishment. That's different than pride, saying, I did this. This is freaking amazing. It's an elation. That's the word. Elated accomplishment. And I know it sounds like word salad, or not word salad, because we know people who do word salad, they make no sense. I mean, some of it is semantics, because just because somebody says, hey, I'm proud of my son, or I'm proud of what I did, doesn't mean they're prideful. It just, they're expressing it in a way that just isn't quite as articulated as it needs to be if you're trying to make a distinction between pride and something else. When I do something that I know that few other people have done, or I've won a contest, which means I am, in the context of that contest, I am the best, or I was considered to be, I was judged to be the best. However subjective that is or isn't, depends on the competition. But if I'm judged to be the best, or I've proven myself to be the best in that situation, there is an elated sense of accomplishment, but it is not pride. I don't automatically throw my hands up and think I am the best, I am the greatest, worship me fools. That's not the mentality. The mentality is just, oh my gosh, that's so awesome. Like, I can't believe I did this. If I was able to pass Navy SEAL training, it would be elated accomplishment. I wouldn't be proud of it. I would just be like, holy cow, look what I was able to do. But I wouldn't go around now thinking like, well, I'm better than that person, that person, that person, that person, because I'm sure they didn't pass their Navy SEAL test. They didn't even try. I mean, same thing with marathons. You get some people, you can tell, because I think it's in America. I'm not sure if it's worldwide or in America, but I think it's just America. It's like only 2% of the entire population is going to run a marathon in their life. And I haven't run a marathon, for the record. I haven't even run half a marathon. And you can tell there are some people that just run it, and it's a sense of accomplishment. They run it to run the race. They do it to finish, and it's a personal goal. It's a personal challenge they have for themselves. And, when they talk about it, they'll have the little banner thing that they wear, the little tag. They'll have that up on the wall or something, and it'll be a conversation piece. They'll be like, yeah, I did. I finished a marathon. It felt really great. There's a difference between that and somebody who, well, I mean, honestly, I haven't met anybody who's bragged about the marathons they've run, because everybody that I've talked to, it's always been, they've never finished in the top 10 or top 20. They're like, I was so glad to be able to do it. It's something a personal goal I set for myself, and I'm glad I did it. And you can tell it's not pride because they didn't need to finish first. They weren't the best. They weren't the fastest. It was a personal thing that they accomplished, and it didn't matter who did it first or who did it faster or where they came in. We didn't even talk about that. It was just the fact they did it. And to be honest, as somebody who's never run it, I'm impressed with somebody who just finishes 26 miles, I think is a marathon? 26 miles of just straight running? Anybody who can do that, hey, kudos to you. That's discipline, it's commitment, it's conditioning, it's all those things. You don't have to finish first for me to be impressed. Not that anybody's trying to impress me, but just being able to finish a marathon, it has its own merits. But there's other, but like, let's just say, so that was actually probably a bad example, because like I said, nobody really seems to be proud. Everybody seems to, that I know, has gone to a marathon, has done it for their own personal satisfaction, their own personal sense of accomplishment, not to prove that they're the best. So not a great example, but it is something that, only, like I said, only 2% of the people do. But there are people who are proud to be Navy SEALs, and there are people that are proud of it because it's an accomplishment. They overcame a lot of adversity to do that. And there's some people that feel that way. They feel pride because few people could do what they have done. And people who have that sense of accomplishment and still maintain that humility, they're going to be easy to talk to. They're going to be easy to relate to. They don't think they're any better than anybody else. But somebody who is proud of what they have done, who is embellishing that pride, only does so because what they did is something that few other people have done. And my point in that is, if suddenly either the qualifications for becoming a Navy SEAL dropped down, or it just became, we just realized, hey, you know what? It sounds like a challenge, but really anybody who's willing to put in the time and effort can eventually become a Navy SEAL. The people who did it as a sense of accomplishment would still feel that accomplishment because it was a personal thing. Somebody who feels pride because they're a part of an elite group would now lose that pride, would now lose everything they feel about it because it's no longer special. They're no longer better than somebody else, anybody else, because everybody can do it. And that's where it comes down to. I mean, that's one of the points. But really, it just comes down to why do you need to be better? Why do you need to compare yourself to somebody else to feel good about yourself? Why can't you just be happy with your accomplishments? Okay, you won the Super Bowl. I'm not calling anybody out. I have nobody in mind for this, but you win the Super Bowl, and they're like, hey, how do you feel? And you're like, I'm the greatest, whatever position. I'm the greatest quarterback who's ever lived. It's freaking amazing. I am the best. Nobody can beat me on a good day. I'm going to beat anybody. I'm going to pick apart any defense. Why would that even enter your mind? Like, why wouldn't you just say, and I'm not saying anybody has said that, but I think there's a reason, because especially if you're in the league, on any given Sunday, you can get wrecked. A bad matchup. You can have a team that's one of the worst in the NFL, and they could just be a bad matchup for you. You can just have a bad day. Somebody could have your number, and you're gonna fall flat on your face. And that's just the way it goes. And hopefully your team is gonna rally around you, and you're gonna still be able to win. But you're just because you're there. There is no. I mean, I think maybe with like tennis or something like that, when an individual sport, there's a little more leeway to say that. But even still, you just say, you know what, I played my best. And I'm just thrilled that it got me. The lighting looks really good on Mario, by the way. That looks pretty nifty. But you'd say, hey, I'm glad to be able to have competed. And usually that's what you hear. Now, whether or not these competitors actually think that or not, we can only speculate. But I would say that if you've been in there long enough, you've gone through the ups and downs, and you played against certain people, and you've been like, holy cow! I mean, I kicked their butt last time, but they really improved. They almost beat me this time. Like, you're not going to necessarily say that out loud, but inside you're gonna think about that. And when you talk about your accomplishments and beating them that time, you're not going to be like, yeah, I'm the actual best. You're like, I'm just glad I got away with it. Hey, I played my best, and fortunately my best was better than their best. So I didn't even understand the guy's question, really. Like, why are people so upset? I'm like, well, because it makes you sound like an a-hole. That's why. It makes you sound like a jerk, because everybody knows that you can only say, if you're saying you're the best or you're better than, it's coming from a place of pride, and nobody likes pride. Pride is not an attractive thing. Confidence is. I don't have to think I'm the best looking guy in the room, or the best talker, or the best at anything in the room to approach a gal with confidence. And confidence is being, I'm a human being, you're a human being. I may think you're absolutely gorgeous. I may think that, and based on something I saw, in theory, if I'm going to approach you, it's not just because of your looks. I saw you do something, I heard you make a joke, or I heard you say something really smart, and you're absolutely beautiful, and automatically, like, I got to kind of rein my thoughts in, because I automatically put you on some kind of pedestal, which, for both of our sakes, you shouldn't be on. But I can approach you because I'm confident. I'm a human being, and I have value. And for me personally, I'm a son of God, not the son of God, but a son of God. You're a daughter of God. In theory, if we're gonna have a relationship that gets along, you believe what I believe, or I believe what you. We believe what each other believes. And I think you're a daughter of the Most High King, and I'm a son of the Most High King, and I'm going to treat you as such. But I'm also know that my value is there, and I don't have to look around at the rest of the room and be like, am I the biggest Chad here? Am I the most amazing guy here? And check another guy's crotch and be like, do I think I'm better? I don't even know why I went there. That was just dumb. That is the most mundane. Like, somebody actually, I've heard several people now. In real life, like, talk about how important sexual compatibility is. I'm like, there's so much. Now, I do apologize. I have no idea what I was doing here in game. Why I'm actually not doing anything right now. Why Mario's just. I think if you were watching, I probably have gone around and around, and I probably was consulting a little bit of a walkthrough at this point. So just bear with me. You'll see Mario spring to life again in no time. But people talking about how important sexual compatibility is. I'm like, well, I mean, maybe if you're super, super young, but I'm 43, and I would hope, my intention, my expectation would be that if I do meet the love of my life, that we will have physical intimacy, and hopefully far into the later years of our lives, especially if we. I mean, I'm a virgin. If she's a virgin too, then hey, hopefully we'll both get to experience experience that connection for the next 20 years or so. Realistically, will that happen? I don't know, but all I can say is I'm not going to base my relationship on whether we're sexually compatible or not. To me, that's the most asinine thing. it's like, if you care about that person, if you love that person, I feel like you can, and again, obviously I'm a virgin, so I'm coming from it from a very naive standpoint. I understand that. But my thought is, you can figure it out. You can figure out a way to make the other person, to bring them pleasure, to make the experience good for them. However that works. Communicate, figure out, work on stuff, do whatever. I think you can make that happen. And if not, worst case scenario, you love that person, you try, and at least you're able to, if you want to have kids, you go through the process to have kids, if nothing else, and just go, you know what, I want to have a child with the love of my life. Now again, that's both probably overly romantic and overly graphic, so I probably just stepped on a bunch of toes doing that, but whatever. I'm just talking about whatever. This is what happens when you're playing a Mario game, or watching a Mario game, and Mallow goes down. Does Mario go down? No, Mario's all right. We'll probably survive this. But like, it just baffled me, because I've heard people at different points say that, and I always thought it was very carnal and very like primitive to think that way, to think about like really, of all the things, of all the different ways you need to be able to connect with somebody, the physical act, the one that in theory is the easiest one. And I know people said, hey, it just doesn't work, but I'm not, in other words, I'm not going to get married to somebody who I love, who I say I love you and I want to spend the rest of my life with you, and then after a night of sex be like, never mind, the sex wasn't great, and so we're just done. Like, that commitment and that love is there regardless. It should be there regardless. That shouldn't even be a factor in it, particularly because as you get older, if you're planning to live past 60, menopause is a thing, libidos do things. Sex may not even be really a thing you do more than a few times a year at some point. What then? If you built it, if you're like, oh, well, it was really important to me, well, then what happens to your relationship when sex isn't at the center of it? It's just, to me, it's just a broken way. So all of that stemming from the offhanded allusion to looking at somebody else's crotch, which I don't do anyway. But the bottom line is, if I'm in the room, I'm not looking at any other guy and thinking, oh, is there a more alpha male? Is there somebody I need to usurp, to somebody that I need to show I'm more dominant than? No, I'm confident in who I am. And if she doesn't see that, if it doesn't come across, que sera. It just wasn't meant to be. But if I have to be the best, if I'm trying to be the best, and I think that once I'm going to come off as an arrogant, I'm going to walk up to her acting like I am the best, acting like I am the greatest man on earth, and she would be lucky to have me. And that's not it. And a lot of guys that are hurting, a lot of guys who have been hurt, they have that attitude, like, she'd be lucky to have me. You know what? Women are lucky if a guy would look at them, and they have a lot of rhetoric they use. And I just haven't really talked to a lot of gals that are hurting, but I've heard guys that are doing it. And at first you're just thinking, this guy's a jerk face. And then later on he tells you that he got burned by a gal, that they were together for 4 years, and just all of a sudden, without explanation, without warning, she was done with the relationship. And that doesn't mean that it wasn't, justified, or that, there wasn't some reason for it. But as far as he knows, as far as communicated to him, it just ended. And so there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of hurt, there's the rejection, there's going to be a feeling of inferiority, like I wasn't good enough. And that's where that hurt comes from. But you can hear guys say that. They're like, oh man, when I walk in a room, I'm just like, any woman would be, lucky to have me. They should be begging me to date them, or whatever they happen to think they should be doing at that particular time. And it's like, but women pick up on that. Women can see that. And same with guys. Like, if a girl walks in the room and she just thinks she's the most gorgeous thing in the room, and there's nobody that can, that is really worth her time, there's an aura that is put out, and it puts people off. At least it does me. Some of the guys would see that as a challenge. And I don't know, maybe in some weird competitive vibe, like two people like that would work out. A guy who thinks he's all that and a girl who thinks she's all that, and their arrogance and their pride like somehow engages each other. I just don't think it goes well. Pride, if pride is in the equation, it doesn't work out well, period. It doesn't matter if it's mutual or not. Pride is just not a thing. Like, it's not something to celebrate, not something to pursue, and pride comes from comparison. Is my point. So that is the reason why saying I'm the best or I'm better than is frowned upon, because because as a society, as people, we understand that only comes from you making a comparison to comparing yourself to other people and deciding that you are better than. And nobody likes to hear that. Nobody wants to hear that. And it's not a societal training thing. It's just, you're a jerk because it's unnecessary. It's unnecessary and it's inaccurate. I guarantee there's nobody in history that has said they're the best at something that were actually unequivocally all the time, perpetually the best. Like Michael Jordan was arguably, at the time, that he played, the best or one of the best. But there were other guys who were better at him than blocking shots. Other guys who were better on the dribble. Other guys who were better. There were Dominique Wilkins. There were guys who were, you could argue, had more, crazy cool dunks. Now, was he one of the best all-around players? Probably, but what drove him when you heard him in interviews, he wasn't saying, I want to be the best. It was like a killer instinct. Like, I want to go out there and crush the opposition. Even if they're better than me, I want to beat them. Like, and that to me, that is, while it doesn't necessarily make for a great teammate, that's the attitude of like a warrior. That's the attitude. And I'll admit, I don't necessarily have that. I don't have that killer instinct, but it's that thing where like, I don't care if you're better than me or not. I don't care if you're bigger than me. I'm going to take you down. And so it's not even pride at that point. And they're not doing it for pride. It is a desire to conquer, a desire to prevail regardless of anything else. Like the win is all that matters. And hopefully that doesn't include cheating, because cheating is outside of the rules, which means you're not really playing the game anymore. If somebody cheats and they win, they didn't actually win. They got a higher score. They put more points on the board or what have you, but it doesn't mean that they actually won, because if they got those points by stepping out of bounds, if they got those points by doing something, penalty, something that's illegal, and they just got away with it, they weren't playing the game of whatever it was. If you cheat on that play, on that, whether it's the play, whether it's the situation, whatever, if you knowingly go outside of the rules, you're no longer playing that sport, which means you can't win a game that is representative of that sport, because you're not even playing. In that moment, you were not playing that game. If you run out of bounds, foot out of bounds, and that's how you get around a defender, and that somehow the rest don't catch it, well, that's not football. Football is within the hash marks, or not the hash marks, it's within the out of bounds lines. There's a football field. If you're not in that football field, I can run circles around the football field. I can get a 600 yards in 5 minutes. Oh, I think if my endurance would last that long. And I'm not getting any points for it because I'm not in the field of play. And it's the same thing. If you're run out of bounds and they just don't call it, you didn't win. You didn't get those yards in the game of football. You got those yards in a game of Calvin ball, where you just kind of make up your rules as you go along. That's a Calvin and Hobbes reference for anybody who doesn't know. Anyway, I've managed to talk about that for quite some time, but it was just something that bothered me, that to a degree, just that somebody would actually be irked that society frowns on arrogance and pride. Two, that he couldn't distinguish between confidence and arrogance. He said they were the same thing. And I'm like, there's reasons why those two words are, well, they're different words for it. Now, there are words that are synonyms. But if you look at the definition of confidence and arrogance, I guarantee you they're going to be very different. And even though they kind of rhyme, there's a reason for that. And like I said, I think the distinction is confidence comes from internal locus of worth, of value, and of assurance. And pride can only exist when in a comparison. It can only happen when you are comparing yourself to other people. If you're on a desert island, pride doesn't exist, because whatever you do, whatever you happen to do, you don't know if you're average at it or better. Like if you're like fishing, you're fishing to try to stay alive. You don't know if catching 5 fish in a day with your, homemade tackle and rod or whatever it is, you don't know if that's exceptionally good, if that's average, if that's less than average, because you're not comparing yourself to anybody else. So you can't be proud that you caught 5 fish, because they could be like, well, actually, most people could catch 10 fish in a day, just so you know. But they don't know, so you wouldn't be proud. You would be grateful. You would be, again, you would be elated with your accomplishment. Hey, I'm going to eat today. I'm not going to starve. I'm not going to die. But you wouldn't be able to know whether you should be proud of that fact or not, because you don't know where you match up with the average population. But you can be confident and say, if somebody would ask you, you could say, hey, I can catch fish. I can catch enough fish to sustain myself, and, I could probably even do better if I woke up earlier and stayed out later, whatever. But I know I can catch fish. That's confidence. Pride is, I'm the best catcher of fish there is. But if you don't have anything to compare yourself to, you can't say that. And in fact, like I said, you could actually be inferior to most people. But it wouldn't matter because you caught the amount of fish you need to survive. So that's all that. Where are we at with Mario here? We are 40 minutes into a 51.5-minute video, and we're going down the waterfall. And you know what? That makes me very thirsty. I am parched. Hopefully you haven't been able to hear any clicking as I've talked, but I am actually very, very thirsty right now, and that water looks really good. Oh, I miss running water. You know, when I was younger, we used to actually sometimes drive out. We were about, I think, 2.5, 3 hours out from the Shenandoah Mountains. Oh, the Blue Ridge Mountains, the Shenandoah Valley. And there were like 2 places you could go that just had running water coming off of rocks from the mountain, from the stream, like right off the highway. Like you could, or right off the main, like the road that wound through the mountains. You could just pull off to the side of the road, have 5 or 6 gallon jugs of water, and fill them up with fresh spring water. And oh man, it was fantastic. And then they, we went up there one time and it was closed off. It was blockaded. Blockaded. I guess, yeah, I said that right. But you couldn't get to it. I think they rerouted it or something. I mean, it wasn't that the road was blocked off. You just couldn't get to the water. The water was stopped up. And it wasn't until shortly after that you started finding bottled water. And it's weird. Like today, we just take that as a thing. Bottled water is a thing. But it was back, when I was growing up, that was as ridiculous as, Spaceballs with their bottled air. It's like, why would you pay for bottled water? Why, because you could get it at springs, you could get it at various places. But when they started getting taken over and it became a proprietary thing, and I mean, to be fair, here in Indiana, it's hard water. So if you don't have a water purification system, you probably want, like, I'm not picky when it comes to my water. Like, I'm not one of these people who are like, when I taste it, oh, that has a hint of jasmine or something in it. It's not good. But hard water, I mean, it tastes like mineral. It tastes like you're drinking rock. So it's bad enough that I can notice it. And so I get it. If you don't have a water softening system here, bottled water is probably the way to go. But I'm not saying it's not justified or doesn't make sense now, but it was just such a foreign concept back then. And now it's standard. And we probably will one day have bottled air or something similar. I mean, we obviously have that for different functions, but like not on a daily basis. You don't wake up and go, oh, hey, let me open up a fresh can of air and, take it in. Like that in Spaceballs. But who knows? We could end up at that point. It's very bizarre though. So many people are preoccupied with preserving the earth and not seeming to care about making sure that the people on earth or the society on earth is worth keeping around. It's like if you got a society full of a-holes, who cares if the earth is still around or not? It's just a bunch of people being jerks and being devastating, which depending on your belief, that's ultimately where humanity is headed. I don't think it's headed there anytime soon. And so I don't want to get too far into the weeds on that. I mean, there are some people, I talk to some people, they are convinced 100% that the end of the world is going to happen in their lifetime. Oh, that water looks so good. It reminds me, oh my gosh, they used to have, it was called Deer Park. It was a bottled water company. And they would have, oh my gosh, I remember it in the summertime, it was the worst. They'd have like the sound of rushing water in the background, like water running over rocks. And they had a guy doing a voiceover who just had this voice. I don't know how to describe it, but it was a voice that made you thirsty. And that may sound horrible, but I mean, it's like, at Deer Park, we have the most whatever water. It was just this really kind of like light, almost whispery voice. And he's like, Deer Park, that's good water. And how, I don't know why, but however he said it in conjunction with the sound effects of the water in the background made you thirsty. No matter what you're going to drink, you're going to drink like 6 gallons of water. But you hear that Deer Park commercial and you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm so thirsty. There's nothing more important right now than getting water. But back then, that was back still when we thought that we could drink soda, pop for some of you all in the northern parts of the country, I believe, and quench our thirst. We thought that a Slurpee was quenching. I remember playing basketball, in 95-degree weather with 100% humidity in Virginia. Me and my friend would be out there running twos against whoever, we came across. Played for 4 or 5 hours. We're out there getting sun, getting nice and tan. My friend was fair skinned, so he was getting burned. Back then, I still had oil in my pores, so I was getting nice and tan. When we'd get done, had 85 cents each, found it in the cushions of the car, literally sometimes. 85 cents, we'd go out to 7-Eleven, get a Slurpee, and we thought we were hydrated. We thought, hey, we're thirsty. Let's get this. This is going to quench our thirst. I mean, it's sugar. It's syrup with ice. We didn't know any better. So I think you had a little bit of the placebo effect. We were like, refreshing. And yet, when we got back home, we had to drink just a crap ton of water because our bodies weren't actually being rehydrated. But there are adults that will say, they're like, man, I'm so thirsty. I need a soda. I need a Coke. Like, dude, if you're thirsty, that's the worst thing you could do. That is going to make you more thirsty because it's nothing but sugar and carbonation. And I don't know if carbonation makes you thirsty, but I know sugar sure as heck does. Anyway, I'm very, very thirsty, and I don't have any water here with me because I didn't want to drink anything on camera out of courtesy to you all. So I guess the trade-off is that I'm going to talk about it incessantly, whether you like it or not. But yeah, I mean, this is torture. I mean, here we are, this beautiful, lush. I mean, now we've got pond, and it looks like good water. It's not hard to be disenfranchised with water when you live in places like Virginia. I think most places in the country, honestly, where all your water is brown. It's some shade of brown. Even creeks. I mean, sometimes creeks can be kind of clear, but the sediment in them is brown or whatever. So there's a smell coming off of them. It's hard to find a body of water where you're like, oh my gosh, I totally would want to drink this. And a lot of times there's still parasites. There's still stuff in there, so you don't want to drink them anyway. But there's very few bodies of water that are still a temptation. Where you're like, man, if I didn't know that it's not good to drink out of this, I would totally be just drinking it up right now. That said, this is a fantasy game, and the water looks really, really good. The texture looks good. And yeah, I don't want to think about that frog being in the water. That's what gets me about the ocean. People who love the ocean, and this is not saying you can't love the ocean, but it is nature's toilet bowl, people. I mean, it is everything that's in that water. Like, on land, we know bears, lions, wolves, whatever, any animal, squirrels, they're crapping all over the place, but we're not necessarily interacting with that poop. If anything, we're stepping on it. That's kind of worst case scenario. When you're in the water, it's fecal matter is all around you. Everything that lives in that water is defecating into that water. You get salt water in your mouth, it's probably got some kind of fecal matter from whatever is locally in the water. Like, it's just, and decay. Like, you've got things that are actively decaying in the water. And you're swimming in it. And it's getting in your eyes, getting in your ears. It just baffles me that people, have such an affinity for the beach. I mean, I liked it growing up well enough. I mean, granted, I had that downtime when after I saw Jaws, when you couldn't pay me to get in the water. And it doesn't help that the sad fact is a lot of shark attacks happen in 2 or 3 feet of water. And you get a bull shark or sand shark, thresher. They're not big sharks. They're not great whites. They can come into shallow water and they can rip your leg off. I'm not trying to say that to scare people, but it's just, it doesn't help that the facts actually, it's like you're more likely to get attacked by a smaller shark that's just going to take a big bite out of your thigh than you are, one of those catastrophic great white attacks. It's like, well, that's great. Well, then you got man of war. Then you got jellyfish. And you got, horseshoe crabs, which aren't really, they're not mean, but they do have the stinging barbs on them. You can stick your foot on them. You got stingrays. There's all kinds of peril in the water. And it's like, I guess if you're surfing, like, that's really the only place you can do it. Water parks, the biggest wave pool I've seen at a water park is not even, it's rolling water with waves that crest like 2 feet from the end, from the shore. It's no comparison. So yeah, if you love surfing, bodyboarding, I guess, like, that's really the only place you're going to get what you want. But for everybody else, like, man, there's plenty of other places to swim, a lot of other places to splash around. That said, I still get bored. I get bored in a pool these days. I'm like, what am I going to do in a pool? Like, unless it's like an Olympic size where I can swim laps. And I'm not good with with turns, like flip turns. I'm horrible at those. So I need something where it's like enough where I can go touch the water, touch the edge of the pool. And I try not to push off because that kind of cuts the length of the pool down, but like touch and go. So, I mean, I prefer Olympic length, 25 meters at least, something like that. But if it's, you know, because then it's a health thing. I can swim laps and you know, swim about a mile or so, get a nice, get my pulse going, get my muscles going. Other than that, it's like, what am I going to do? Just stand around in the water and splash around? Like, it was great when I had an imagination, when I had Legos and toys to play with. And I could have like little submarines going into the water. And, you know, I don't know how I got away with it, but I had like a shark, you know. I was like, why would I bring that in the pool? Why would I introduce that monstrosity into the ecosystem of a pool? But I did. And I still freaked myself out with it. That's the weird thing. Like, you know, I'd bring it in the water and I'd use it sparingly, but I couldn't just have it sitting in the pool, because if I just saw the shark sitting there, it would freak me out a little bit. Even though it's small and it's fake, it's rubber, and I'm in a chlorinated pool, just psychologically, man, I tell you, it does stuff to you. So anyway, that was a very poignant discussion, I understand, that didn't really have a whole lot to do with what was going on. But that to say, despite as amazing as I am in this game, I'm not proud. You know, I don't think of myself as better. I can say, hey, you know what? I can play Mario RPG. Am I the best? Don't know. Don't care. I just like to play the game. And it's up to everybody else to be like, he is one of the best, by far. But I have a feeling after watching my gameplay, nobody is going to say that about me. And that's okay. That's all right. I still enjoy the heck out of playing it.